Hi, we're back. Michelle here from Ace Nutrition, and tonight we're doing a very simple and easy recipe, very nutritious and hearty, especially for the winter months. And I'm Michelle. We're at the Joy of Cooking with Michelle, and my goal is to provide some quick and easy recipes for everybody, and especially using things that you might have in your fridge and seasonal vegetables. So that's why this recipe interested me a lot, because it uses carrots, celery, potatoes, onions, 1 cup of lentils, and the nice thing is it uses the dried lentils. So I went to Food Basics and I just bought a small container, very economical. It was $1.99, and you probably could get at least 4 or 5 servings to make 4 or 5 pots of soup out of this. So very economical. More economical than the canned, of course. And I like the green lentils. You can get brown lentils. And so what I've done, because I've noticed in the videos in the past that when I have my oven on behind the stove top, that when everything's sizzling, you can't hear very well. So what I've done is I've taken the first few ingredients and I've sauteed them. So this recipe calls for 4 carrots, 4 celery stalks, 2 garlic cloves, and a small onion to start with. So I've chopped those up and I've sauteed them in my frying pan. Here they are, right here. So everything's not really in minute, really small diced, but just easily chopped up size, smaller than bite size. And you can see they're not really huge, just really nice. So what I've done is you saute that for about 5 minutes. And the key is that you don't want the garlic to turn brown. So that's the way you judge, about 5 minutes. Interestingly, when I started out, I was thinking today that I could do this recipe in my crock pot. Then I looked at the recipe more closely, and for 2 reasons I decided not to. I'm just going to put this back over here. Because I thought my crock pot, you can see, is relatively small. It has a small insert, just slightly bigger than maybe 2 liters. It's really great when you want to cook something slow and long, like a pot roast or a stew or something like that. But I looked at the volume of the vegetables that we're going to be using, and then we're going to use almost 1 liter of stock. And I remember this happened to me before. I started adding everything in, and then I realized it wouldn't all fit in my small crock pot. So I decided to use my bigger, like this holds at least 4 or 5 liters of soup. So I thought I'll get my nice Paderno pot out and I will cook my soup in this. The joy is 2 things. The joyful thing is that all of these pulses, like the legumes in terms of the beans, the peas, and the lentils, Canada is one of the major exporters of this. In the world, I'm talking. So we are rich in resources for this. So I love using the legumes as much as I can, which we think of the pulses are the beans, the peas, and the lentils. I like to use that term because a lot of people haven't heard it before. And I love the dried pulses. But the problem is with most of the dried pulses, like the beans and the chickpeas, is that they have to be soaked. So the best thing to do is to soak them in water overnight to soften them. The exception is the lentils. So the super cool thing about the lentils is that we can put this recipe together, put it on the stovetop, 20-25 minutes, boom, it will be ready. So the lentils are the exception. That's why I love cooking with lentils. Plus they're really high in protein and they're very high in iron. What I've done is, like I said, I've started with the carrots and the celery and the onions and the garlic and sauteed those for 5 minutes. From there, it's very simple. What we do is we add 3 cups of potatoes and 1 cup of lentils. One thing you have to remember about the lentils is that you put them in a strainer and you should rinse them really well in water and look at your lentils really carefully, because sometimes there might be like little bits in there that don't belong, little branches or something like that. So I found a couple things that I wanted to take out, but they look beautiful. So what I'm going to do from here, after I've sauteed the first 4 ingredients, is that I'm going to add the potatoes, the 3 cups of potatoes, and the lentils, and I bought a lower sodium vegetable broth. Now you could use chicken broth if you wanted to, but this way when we use vegetable broth, the whole meal becomes vegetarian, and that's golden. I like that idea. I think if you're going to do it right. So I'm going to add the potatoes, 3 cups of potatoes that I've diced up ahead of time. The interesting thing is that the original recipe says that you should saute the potatoes after you've sauteed the carrots and the onions and the celery and the garlic together, to add the potatoes and saute for another 5 minutes. If you're really a big recipe follower, I would say go ahead and do that. I don't really think it's necessary because we don't normally saute potatoes in recipes, and they're going to cook as long as the lentils are going to cook. So what I've done is, you can see I've cut them relatively small. So they're diced. I've cut them relatively small. So in 25 minutes, the potatoes will cook. And I don't want them to be mushy. So I think they're fine just to go like this. And then what we do is we add the washed dry lentils, just 1 cup. That's all you're gonna need. They kind of puff up a little bit when they cook. They expand a little bit. They definitely won't get mushy. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add, this is approximately 1 liter, just the Tetra Paks of the vegetable broth, which I love. And again, make sure you read the labels and look for the lowest sodium option that you can find. So that's what I'm gonna do. And when I sauteed everything ahead of time, I used olive oil. I'm very partial to olive oil. So there we go. Now, what we do is put this back on the stove top, and we cook it. We simmer it. Basically, we're going to simmer this for 20 minutes. It says to simmer it uncovered. So I'm going to let that do its own thing. I really like this recipe. It's fantastic. In the end, what we're supposed to do is, we're supposed to add a little bit of sea salt and pepper. What I did was I added that while the first 4 ingredients were sauteing. So I'm not going to add any further, because I'm a big fan of people, when they're eating, to be able to add what they need at the table. And that way they can control the amount of sodium and spices that they like. Once that cooks and simmers gently for 20 minutes. Then what we're going to do is we are going to add the greens. So we want sturdy greens like kale, and we're going to add that, and just until it becomes limp for about 20 minutes. And that really, after this cooks for 20 minutes, we add this, cook it for an extra 5 minutes, and then boom, it's finished. The recipe's complete, except for the seasoning. They talk about adding a little bit of rosemary, so I have some garden fresh dried rosemary that I'm going to add. And you could really make it your own. If you wanted to add some frozen beans or peas, go ahead and do that, because that's what we want to do. We want to pump up the vegetables. But I'm following the recipe now. I'm going to post the recipe for you. I wanted to tell you something fun. And that is that what I did with my leftover pumpkin, because last week we made the pumpkin pasta marinara, and I had half a can left over of my pumpkin. So I thought, what am I going to do? So I decided to make oatmeal muffins. I think I've shown you the oatmeal muffins before. Sometimes I cheat and I use the little Quaker oatmeal muffins. I love this because all I have to do is add a little bit, like 3/4 of a cup of water and 1 egg, and basically I have the foundation of an oatmeal muffin. And so that's the fundamental recipe. What I did was I added about 3/4 of a cup of my pumpkin that I had left over from last week. Then I thought, what would be good? So I added half a cup of raisins, half a cup of walnuts, half a cup of coconut, and then a few spices that I really enjoy, allspice, nutmeg, cinnamon, and mixed it all up. Now the recipe, usually you cook muffins for 18 to 20 minutes. I would add an extra 5 minutes because the pumpkin makes the muffins a little bit dense, and that's what I did. It was so delicious. I enjoyed it so much. So I wanted to pass that tip on to you. So like I said, I'm going to let this simmer for about 20 minutes. Then I'm going to add my sturdy greens. You could probably use Swiss chard. I have 2 cups of kale. Then we cook that for an additional 5 minutes. Add the seasonings that you enjoy. I have rosemary. I'm going to post the whole recipe for you with the suggestions that they have. And I really hope you have an opportunity to make this. It's something that you could even make when you get home from work, because boom, within half an hour, it's ready to go. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. This was so enjoyable to share this recipe with you. So I will see you same time next Monday. Bye.